It was like 2013 when the show was announced. Yeah, 2013. And I didn't really know what to think about it. All I had known about the character Daredevil came from the Ben Affleck movie. So I didn't know shit about the character. I didn't know anything about Jessica Jones or Luke Cage or Iron Fist. So I really didn't know how these Marvel Netflix shows were going to go. I didn't know if I'd love them. I didn't know if I would like them or anything like that. Or if I didn't know if I would hate them. I thought I would definitely hate them after I'd seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I just thought, okay, these are just going to be shows with that tone, that cinematography, color palette, and worst of all, range of acting. But then the first season of Daredevil came out like 2015, about 2 years later, and it defied and blew away all expectations that I had. I don't want this to be a full review of the first season of Daredevil because I really want to save my complete thoughts for a more in-depth analytical analysis review or analysis video because I just think it's just that good. I'd say that it's one of the few comic book to film, or in this case, television adaptations that is almost damn near perfect in every aspect. Easily one of my favorite corners of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was good to know that, yeah, there's all this fantastical, weird shit going on with, like, the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers and all that stuff. Very kid-friendly stuff, but, there is actual real-life repercussions going on somewhere in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Really dark, deep, emotional stuff going on. It was cool seeing that. It showed that it was really diverse and the MCU is full of stuff and anything could really happen at any moment. It could have easily done, a by-the-numbers, very average Daredevil show, or hell, they could have even done another movie reboot that would have been the go-to idea, where they have him in the suit and they have him fighting the Kingpin again, and it's an average, movie that everyone can see, even kids or whatever, but they didn't do that. They decided to say, hey, this is a character with a lot of rich history, who's had a lot of creators, has had a lot of, creative input over the years. We really want to give this character the time to grow and really show that there's more to him than just, oh, a cool costume or a couple cool villains or anything like that. They actually fleshed each character out in this show gradually. Really, the beauty of this being a Netflix show, it has so much time and so many episodes to progress each character and to progress the story, and it's not pigeonholed to the confines that most movies have nowadays. Most movies, studios want them to be around 2 hours, 2.5 hours at most, and if you had done this show in a movie format, it wouldn't have been the same. It would have been very rushed and just very by the numbers. Also, it doesn't have to be confined to the restraints that most TV shows nowadays are really confined to. The problem with TV shows is that they have way too many episodes. I think The Flash is a prime example of that. It does not need to be a 23-episode season. It could easily be 13, 15 episodes, maybe even 10 episodes. It does not need to be a 23-episode, each an hour episode. If you're going to be 23 episodes, at least be like a half hour each or a little less than that. It's well cast and well acted. Charlie Cox, for me personally, I feel like he did to Daredevil what Hugh Jackman did to Wolverine. I can't really see anyone else playing this character, at least for a really long time. And then D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. Holy, fucking shit. It's easily the best Marvel Cinematic Universe villain by far. Wrote and they made to actually exist in the real world. He's just this guy who genuinely wants to help clean up his neighborhood and help his neighborhood, but in doing that, he's screwing over a lot of people. He's never wanting to hurt people. It's just what he's going to have to do to really help the larger majority of people. So really used to hearing the Kingpin with this very, deep, barreling voice that, echoes, very much like how it was in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. But here, it's kind of deep, but it's really raspy and rowdy. And Vince D'Onofrio really did his best to make this his own Kingpin. It was really hard looking at some of the comics or even, like I said, the 90s Spider-Man show and not thinking about this Kingpin. He really made this his own character. Now we get to season 2. And I don't want to say that it's shit, but in my opinion, as a fan of the first season of Daredevil, not a fan of the comic books, after I had seen the first season of Daredevil, yes, I went and read a lot of the comic books. But going into the first season, I was not a fan of the comic books. I was just going into that show thinking to myself, okay, how can this show get me interested in this character? And it did that. and I read a lot of the comic books before going into the second season, and I get a lot of stuff that goes on in the comics happens in the season. But in my opinion, I don't think the second season is even half as good as the first season. I think it's okay. It's not the worst comic book adaptation I've ever seen in my life. It's just average. This feels like to me they had two separate ideas for two separate seasons of Daredevil. One that involved Punisher fighting Daredevil, or Daredevil versus the Punisher, whatever you want to call it. And then one season with Daredevil and the Hand and Elektra and all that stuff. And if you just did two separate seasons doing that stuff, it would have been fine. But instead they decided, for whatever reason, to mash both of these completely separate and completely different plot lines together to make one whole, really over-bloated and very elongated season that really should have been shorter than what it actually ended up being. This thing with the third season of Archer, where the first 3 episodes of that season were shown like months ahead of time before the actual premiere of the third season of Archer. And then months later, they actually showed the whole season of Archer in its entirety, because those first 3 episodes were its own separate storyline that were completely different and completely separate from the rest of the season. That's honestly what they should have done with this season. The first 4 episodes of this season are the only episodes that made me go, okay, this is actually just as good first season of Daredevil. Just as good. Those first 4 episodes are great. Daredevil fighting the Punisher was awesome. And I'll even go on record that they said that they did a great job with the Punisher in this show. The main thing that they never could get right with the Punisher in all the other movies, that the Punisher was never scary. There was never a moment where the audience was actually scared of the Punisher. And it's the same thing with Wolverine. It's the reason why Wolverine never really worked in some of the other movies until Logan, is that there was never a moment where you made me go, oh shit, I should be afraid and like scared of this character. And this is the one time, one live action Punisher that made me go, holy shit, I do not want to fuck with this guy. This guy's a bad character. I don't want to fuck with him in any capacity. And I get that they threw the Punisher in this season of Daredevil, just sort of dip their toe into the water and see if there was an audience for a possible Punisher spin-off show or even a spin-off movie or whatever. But guys, here's the newsflash. People are going to watch a fucking Punisher show regardless if you put him in another Marvel show or movie. There is an audience for Punisher out there. Almost once a day, I see some motherfucker wearing a Punisher t-shirt, a Punisher hoodie, a Punisher Scully. Oh, I get it. It's called Scully. Oh, that's funny. I get it. People are going to watch a Punisher show no matter what. Just because there were 3 Punisher movies that no one liked, that does not mean that nobody likes the Punisher. That just means those 3 movies were shit and they want to see the Punisher in a much better format. You did not need to shoehorn him in this season just so you could justify doing a Punisher show later down the line. But the main problem with those first 4 episodes, regardless if I love them or not, is that they're completely separate from what goes on in the rest of the season of Daredevil Season 2. You can really categorize Daredevil Season 2 into 2 sections. Daredevil versus the Punisher, and Daredevil and Elektra versus the Hand. That's where this show goes fucking wrong, because these 2 plot lines are constantly clashing and constantly going back and forth for attention. Speaking about the Hand this season, I get that that is something from the comic books. And I get that this is a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And on top of that, this is a comic book adaptation. There should be really comic booky, out there stuff going on, okay? Here, they introduce zombie ninjas and all that shit, which admittedly, yeah, it's a cool idea. But really, when you get down to it, and the way it's explained in this season is really fucking stupid. I know that the Hand is a huge part of the Marvel comic books as well as Daredevil, but just going off of what I saw in the first season and the tone that was set up in the first season, I thought that this show was going to be the equivalent to Nolan's Batman, where yes, this is based off a comic book, and there are characters from the comic books in this show, but I felt that they were going to go in a completely different direction and in a more realistic direction with these characters. And yeah, sure, they had the Joker in those movies, but he wasn't some guy who fell into the vat of chemicals. It was some guy who just had paint on. And yes, I know it is a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe where a bunch of comic booky, weird out there stuff is always going on. I get that. But like I said, I thought this show was going to be a different corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a more realistic part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe where people are mortal. People can be harmed by a bullet or by falling a certain height. People are human in this series. I just believe that I was not ready for the way that they were going to do the Hand in this show. And if you are a fan of the Hand, you are gonna love this show. In fact, if you are a huge fan of classic Daredevil with the suit and Elektra and the hand and stick, you're gonna love this season. In fact, I didn't know they were gonna go with the undead ninja zombie shit. It takes away from the realism and what made Daredevil Season 1 and this whole Marvel Netflix stuff so special. But when you introduce the whole immortality thing and bringing people back from the dead, it just takes all that tension away because, yeah, Elektra, she dies at the end of this, but hey, look, they're bringing her back for the Defenders, so there was absolutely no tension in that fight, looking back in retrospect. Just want to remind you, the first season had a great villain with Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin. Not only did they have a really big-named and well-known and well-recognized and very, very critically acclaimed actor behind that character, but the character itself was extremely interesting. And he had complete depth and complete dimension, and he was all around an interesting character. Who did they get to upstage that character, upstage that villain in this season? They got the Asian guy who is a henchman of Fisk in the first season, who ended up dying in the first season, who had all of maybe 5 lines in the first season. Fucking who? They played up as this big reveal that, oh, it was Nobu the whole time. How is he back from the dead when it's not a fucking surprise? The first season, he showed up in a hand ninja outfit. And then in all the trailers for all of this season leading up to its premiere, they had pretty much Nobu front and center in some of those trailers and in some of those clips. It was not a surprise that this guy came back. It seems like they traded character development, likability, and relatability for, oh, hey, here's a bunch of ninjas that you can do with really just defined by, oh, he's a part of the Hand. And that's really it. When it's actually really sad because he actually had one of the best scenes in the first season of Daredevil. He was actually one of the few people who actually stood a chance against Daredevil and came the closest to actually just fucking killing him, like, in the middle of the show. But no scene in this show, no fight scene between him and Daredevil ever gets as good as it got in that first season. He also has one of the worst lines of dialogue in the entire show, and one of the worst lines of dialogue that I've heard in any modern comic book, movie, or TV show adaptation, where he looks at the screen, almost as if it's a character itself. He looks at the screen and says with all seriousness and all conviction, "Daredevil must die." I'm telling you, he said it just like that. Maybe not as borderline racist as I did it, but I'm telling you, just like that. It was really at that point, watching the show, where I said to myself, this show just totally lost everything it was, totally forgot it wanted to be. Like I said, it sounds like something out of a Schumacher Batman movie, just something really cliche, and that you never hear in any actual modern day superhero movie, or even a fucking just modern day movie, period. I don't want to just be ragging on this entire season. I really don't. There are stuff in this season that I really do like. There's some stuff that actually comes so close to being just as good as it was in the first season. I mentioned The Punisher was really great. Jon Bernthal did a great job. As much as I thought Matt Murdock was an asshole in the season, especially compared to the first season, I actually like his dilemma. I really like his storyline in this. It's pretty much the Spider-Man 2 storyline, where he has to choose whether or not he wants to be Matt Murdock, the regular guy, the average day lawyer, or Daredevil, the vigilante. If I had to compare Daredevil to any other superhero out there, I'd probably compare him best to Batman. He's pretty much Marvel's answer to Batman. Where people like to say that Bruce Wayne is the fake identity with Batman, and Batman is the actual identity, the same thing can be said about Daredevil, especially in this season. Matt thinks that he gets more stuff done when he is Daredevil. He's sick of being sorry for who he is. So he just decides to be Daredevil full time, and having Elektra being that devil on his shoulder. See what he did? Just egging him on on and on and on throughout the whole season was a great idea. Elektra is great too. She's not Jennifer Gardner, so she immediately gets a plus in my book. Not to mention that the relationship between her and Matt is just so fucking interesting. She brings out both the best and the worst out in Matt. The season did a great job with showing how different the relationships that Matt Murdock has with these two women are, Karen Page and Elektra. You see that Matt Murdock is more compatible with Karen Page, but Daredevil is more compatible with Elektra than anybody else. If anything, the season did a great job of splitting these two personas right down the middle, differentiating between them, seeing which one is more progressive when it comes towards justice and finding it, and which one would win out in the end. As when it comes down to it, I really don't want to hate on Daredevil Season 2. Majority of the stuff that is in the season, yes, I don't like. I think it's very by the numbers, and I think it betrays a lot went down in the first season. I think what it all comes down to is this. The kind of Daredevil fan that you are. If you're a fan of the comic book Daredevil, the really classic Daredevil stuff, like I said, you're absolutely going to love the season. You're going to have a ball, and you might find some stuff in here that you thought was missing from the first season. But if you are like me, someone who is just became a fan off of the first season of the show, you might find some stuff very disappointing in the season. You might feel a little bit betrayed. But I say still stick with it because, like I said, there's still a lot of stuff that will get you through that you actually might enjoy. You know, who knows? I don't think it's horrible by any means. It's not a complete atrocity. It's just okay in my opinion. Simply put, okay.